Hello everyone and welcome to this another episode of 3D Prototyping in Unity. My name is Kasanas. In the last episode, we took care of the camera. The basics of the camera anyway. We're able to do a 360 view around our character. That's going to give us a great opportunity to look at the character as we make adjustments to it, to view the animations from different directions, to see the customizations we make, etc. Alright, we're going to add more to the camera in a later episode so the camera actually follows the character whenever the character jumps. But for now, our camera is working the way we want it to be working. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at some of the animation. We're going to start off very slowly with the animation because we're doing a handful of different things. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the idle. All right, let's get started. Okay, so in today's episode, we are going to take a look at the idle animation. And in series past, our idle animation was fairly straightforward. We built one simple idle. The character entered the idle loop and they continued inside that idle loop for any given period of time. Now, in our other series so far, we've done two side scrollers basically, and in both of those, the character was constantly on the move. The player was trying to dodge, attacks or whatever. In this case here, we've got a kind of a different idea for this type of idle, for this type of scene actually. Basically, our player is going to be looking at this character for long periods of time. And obviously, we don't want the idle to become extremely noticeable. We don't want it to be obvious that it's a loop. If we take a look, let's go to our models here, and we take a look at our actual character. We created several different idles last time when we broke this up, a few episodes ago when we actually broke up our different animation. We have our player idle. Our player idle left, if I hit play, you can see it. Our player is idling on the left-hand side. It's a very, very simplistic idle. If we take a look at our player idle right, it is also a fairly simplistic idle, nothing a whole lot happening there. The character is just slightly moving. Now, I've also got two other idle type animations. I've got the player shift left and the player shift right. And if we take a look, let's take a look at the player shift left. If I hit play, you can see the character basically shifts his weight in the opposite to the opposite foot. Now, what I want to do is I want to create some kind of special movement. I want our player to begin, let's say, in the player idle left. We want our player to begin, our character to begin in that animation, and then after a certain amount of time, some random amount of time, we want our character to shift his weight to the other foot, and then go into that idle, and remain in that idle until afterwards, after a certain amount of time or a random amount of time, we're going to shift our weight into the other foot. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because, like I said, our player is going to be looking at the screen for long periods of time and maybe not doing anything other than shifting some equipment around and that kind of stuff. So we don't want the idle to get extremely boring. You could do a number of different things. You don't have to do what I'm doing here if you don't want to. You could have the character every once in a while do some kind of random event like stretch or wave or something like that. It's up to you. But really the reason I'm doing this is to make sure that we don't get into some kind of pattern that's very obvious to everybody. Okay, so to start off with, make sure you've got your animator tab available to you. If you don't actually have it, it's under a window and you can find it under animator right here. Pop up that window so we've got it. Inside of the animator tab, we're going to actually be building our animation state machine, the thing that's going to control our character's animation movements. All right. I'm going to click on the player, the custom player over here, and if we take a look at our actual custom player, we have a number of different things that we added over last week, or that was there by default. One of the things that was there by default is the animator, and you'll look at right here. Currently, there is no controller, none. There's not actually any kind of controller. We don't have one built yet for our character, so we're going to build one right now. So in your assets folder, I'm going back to my assets folder. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say create. I'm going to create a brand new folder that I'm going to call animation. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. I just like to break up my things like this so I can always find what I'm looking for. I'm going to go to my animation folder, bang bang, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say create, and I'm going to create a brand new animation controller, or animator controller, excuse me. So all I did is go create animator controller, boom, and there it is. And I'm going to rename this to player AC. I'll call it player AC. And player AC stands for player animator controller. Okay? I'm going to click on the custom player again, and I'm going to drag this player AC into the slot where it says controller. So now instead of saying none, it says player AC. This player AC is going to allow us to build an animation state machine that's going to control all the movements of our character. Okay, let's go back to our actual models directory right here, and I'm going to find all of my animation idle states. So player idle left, player idle right. Oops, sorry, I clicked off of it. Models. I'm going to find my player shift left and my player shift right. Okay, so I've brought each of these in now, and you can see that in one circumstance, the state, this is an animation state right here, it contains one full animation in it. The animation is orange, and the other three are by default gray. The orange state, this orange state right here, is my default state. It's what I'm going to enter in at. Okay, meaning if I hit play right now, let me just hit play and show you. If I hit play right now, my character is already in that animation state. My character is in the left-hand idle, all right, which is great. Now, when I created these idles in Maya, I created them at a speed I liked, but I found that I wanted the speed a little bit slower here. So I'm going to put this at 0.75. Each one of these I'm going to shift to a speed of 0.75. Let me just show you what happens. If I have this thing set, let me actually shift this, speed. I'm going to shift this speed to, let's put it at 0.25 and hit return. Watch what happens when I hit play now. Well, you can't really tell here. You can't really tell here because it's not actually moving that quickly. Let's actually take one of the other states. Let's actually go to player shift left, where we actually have some movement. Okay, let's say that I didn't want my player to start off in player idle left. Instead, I wanted my player to start off in the player shift. Okay, so I just want them to run the player shift over and over again. If I wanted that to happen, I could simply click on it. I could right click, and I could say set layer as default. And you can see this arrow itself switched over to our player shift left, and player shift left is now orange. If I hit play, let me just put this back at 1 for a second. If I hit play right now, you can see my character is shifting. It's not looped, so we just shifted over once. Okay, I'm going to hit stop. This whole thing is not looped. We did not set it to be looped in our actual animation, so it only played once. If I change this to a value of 0.25, let's say, and I hit play, watch what happens. The shift is very, very much slower. Okay, so what I want to do for each of these states, first of all, I'm going to set my idle left back to my default state by clicking on it, right-clicking, and saying set as default. I'm going to set each of these to a value of 0.75. Okay, so it's going a little bit slower than its original. I'm going to set this to 0.75. Each one of these is going to slow it down. I'm going to set this one to 0.75. And lastly, this one to 0.75. It already is set, so that's perfect. Each of these is now set. Oh, no, sorry. This one to, yeah, 0.75. Each one is now set, right? Did I skip one? No. Okay, great. Each one is now set to 0.75. And that is going to allow me to slow down the animation. I just want it to be a little bit slower so it's a little bit more obvious and has a little bit more intent to it. When I created it in Maya, I liked the pacing at which I created it at, but I actually want to go a little bit slower now. Okay. So right now we are back with our player idle left as our default state, and I don't remember if it's, I think I want to go this way. Bang, bang, bang. I can't remember though, I'll have to set it up and see. So basically what I want to happen is I want my, let me just double check. I want to make sure that this is, on this foot, this character has the left foot on the ground. I just want to make sure that in this state, let me make this set as default for a second. I can't remember how I did it. Right foot on the ground. Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay, so put this back at default. Okay, so basically what I want to do now is set up a reason why this character is going to shift from side to side. I want it to be able to go through here and shift from side to side. All right, I'm going to right click, I'm going to say make transition, and it's going to give me this little arrow. I'm going to drop that arrow onto this location. Okay, and basically now I've got a transition that goes from idle left to shift right. All right, I'm going to right click on shift right, make transition, and drag it and drop it on player idle right. I'm going to click on player idle right. I'm going to right click, make transition, drop it, and lastly make transition like this. So basically now I've got a circle that goes around. All right, the player is going to be able to travel from one state along this route to each of these states. Okay, so from player idle left, if something happens, the character will be able to go along this arm, this transition, to this state, and it'll go into this state here. Afterwards, I can have it go along this transition to this state, and so on and so on. So we're making a loop here. We're making a circle, basically, that's going to allow us to eventually get back to our player idle left. Okay, over here in the parameters, I want to create a reason why I might actually shift. And I'm going to simply create a brand new trigger. We have a number of different options here. When I hit plus there, we had several different options. We had a float, an int, a bool, and a trigger. A float is any real value, any real number. So 1.1, 5.8, whatever you want. An integer is any whole number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A bool is a true or false value. And lastly, a trigger is also it's a true value. So whenever a trigger is set, whenever a trigger goes off, it goes true, false, true, false, true, false, right away. Okay? Unlike a Boolean, where as long as you set it to true, it will remain true, and when you turn it to false, it will remain false. A trigger will automatically reset itself. Okay? So basically, we created this brand new trigger, and I'm going to rename this trigger to I'll just call it idle trigger. All right, and idle trigger is going to be what we use to move from state to state. So if I am in the player idle left and I want to go to player shift right, I'm going to click on the arrow itself, and we're going to get this brand new window over here in the inspector. The inspector allows us to see the different variables and the blend times that we are going to go through in order to have this blending of these two animations. Okay, I'm just going to take this, I'm going to drag it all the way back like that. And I'm going to leave that. That blend time is probably fine. The first thing I'm going to do on this arm, on this transition, is turn off the exit time. Has exit time means after a certain amount of time, leave this state and go on to the next one. And I don't want that to be the case. I only want to leave this player idle left if I tell it to do so. And the only way I'll ever tell it to do so is if, in this conditions list is empty, I say plus, is if my idle trigger goes off. If my idle trigger goes off, I want it to switch states. Okay? Now, I want the same thing to occur here on player idle right. If I'm actually in the player idle right, I want to go into my player shift left. I'm going to click on the transition. Only if, not if it has an exit time. I don't care about that. I'm going to shift this all the way down. I don't want it to go unless I tell it to. And once again, it'll only go if I tell it to, if my idle trigger goes off. So if my idle trigger goes off, I will shift from player idle right into player shift left. Now that leaves two other transitions. That leaves a transition from player shift right to player idle right and player shift left to player idle left. All right, both of these transitions here. Now again, I'm going to drag this all the way back, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to drag this all the way back. All right, now in both of these, as I already showed you when I demonstrated the player shift right, it is not looped. It happens once, and then we are done, and it stays in that state. All right. So what I want to do is I actually want to leave has exit time turned on both this one and this one. They both have has exit time turned on, and what that means is that after a certain amount of time, we are going to shift out of our existing animation and shift into the next set of animation. Okay. So right now, if I actually want to demonstrate this, I can. Let me just extend this and extend. Let me see if I can find it. Where is it? Right there. All right, let's make this a little bigger so you can see it. I can actually trigger this to go off on my own. If I hit play right now, we're going to see that my play. Oops, sorry. Let me just go into maximize on play off. If I hit play right now, play, we're going to see that our character. Let me click on our character, on our custom player. We're going to see that our custom player is currently in our player idle left, and they're looping through player idle left. Okay? If I go through and I hit my idle trigger, bang, you can see that it shifted over and automatically shifted over again. We are currently in our idle right. All right? If I hit this idle trigger once more, bang, we shifted to our player shift left and then back to our idle left. Okay? So watch this animation here. Once again, if I hit the trigger, it's going to shift over here, run through my idle shift right, my player shift right, then skip over to idle right. Ready? Bang. Shifted over. The player is now in the idle right. And if I hit this button again, idle trigger, bang, my player shifts and shifts back to my idle left. Okay? Now that's basically what we want to happen, but we want to do it in code. So let's take a look at the code to do that now. Okay, so writing this script is not going to be too difficult. We're going to write this script in various degrees, and for now, all we're going to add into it is our animation for our idle. So let's go over to our assets. Let's go into our scripts. So we're under scripts, and the only thing we have in here right now is our camera group controller. On my custom player, so I'm clicking on my custom player over here, I'm going to, it's back on scene for now, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to say add component. And I'm going to add a brand new script. New script. And I'm going to call this new script, it's first of all, it's a C# script. We're doing everything in C#. And I'm going to call this script player controller. Bang. All right, and there's my player controller script. And I will double click to open up my player controller script. It's going to open up in MonoDevelop. Come on, MonoDevelop. There we go. And let's zoom in this a few times. View, zoom in, view. I don't know why it doesn't save my settings. View, zoom in. We'll zoom in a bunch here so you guys can see it. Okay, that should be enough. View, zoom in. All right, so this is our player controller script. And just like the last script we wrote, we start off with a start and an update function. Otherwise, this class is pretty much empty. Well, it is empty. All right, I'm going to add a couple of things here. The first thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add a serialized field, that I'm going to call, that's going to be a float, and I'm going to call it idle switch. All right, and the idle switch is basically the when we're going to switch, at the time that we're going to switch. All right, like the amount of time that it takes for us to switch. Now, the next thing we're going to add is a simple float that's going to be a private float, and we're going to call this next idle switch. And the next idle switch, this is basically a timer. So after the idle switch amount of time has passed, there's a possibility that we're going to go into our next idle, and it's going to be compared to this next idle switch, telling us when we can actually switch. All right. I'm not sure if we need this right now, but we're going to add it anyway. We're going to add a reference to our animator, which we've already built, and I'm going to call player anim. I'm not sure if I actually need this not right now, but I'll add it just for fun. Okay, now we want to set a couple of things here. So that's fine. That's all of the variables that I think we need to start off with. Let's go down to our start, and we're going to use our start function to initialize a number of different things. The first thing we're going to initialize is when our player can next do their switch. When they can next, just say okay to this if you ever see this. When our character can actually switch to the next foot, all right, or do its switch. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to say that my next idle switch is equal to our current time.time. All right, so whatever time in the game, and whenever this starts, it's pretty much at 0 right now. Whatever time in the game plus our idle switch time. All right, maybe I should call that idle switch time, but I just called it idle switch. So, our idle switch. All right, so basically it's going to take whatever time we're at here. It's going to add this offset time to come up with our time when we can next do our switch to our next stance. Okay, and I might as well set up right now our player anim as well, which is going to be equal to our get component. And get component, you're going to use this a lot, guys. Get component. Get component basically goes in and it looks for a component of a particular type. In this case here, I'm looking for an animator. So I used an angular bracket. I'm looking for an animator. All right. Oops. Bang, bang, and bang. And that is basically what it does. It will look on the location that this script actually exists. Okay, so wherever this script is, it's going to go through and it's going to look for our animator. All right, and if we take a look at Unity for a second here, at our actual player, the script is right here on the main, on the top level of our actual character. Our player controller script and our animator is right there as well. Okay, so let's open this back up. Okay, and I think that's all we need currently in our start. We're going to add more to this. This is basically going to be our player controller function for everything we're doing, for our running and everything else. Now, our code is pretty straightforward. What we want to do is in our update, we're going to do this in our update. We don't have to do it in our fixed update because we're not actually doing anything with physics right now. So in our update, we're actually going to write, we're actually going to do an if statement. If, and we're going to take a look at our current time, and if our current time is greater than our next idle switch, All right. Next idle switch is a time, and we set it right here, right here. So our next idle switch is equal to the time whenever this started plus an offset time. So if our time of the game, time is whatever time it is in the game, is greater than the timing of our next idle switch, then we want to possibly be able to switch. So I'm going to add in a couple of curly brackets there, and I want to give this. Let's give it a 50% chance to switch. 50% chance to change. All right, I'll just write that for now so you guys know what that is. And basically what I want to do is I want to set an int. I'll call I, and I'm going to set I equal to a random, and this is just a built-in function, random.range, and we will give it a range of between 0 and 10. So basically it goes from the lower value 0 up to 10 as a maximum. It will never say 10, it'll be like 0 to 9. And that's it. That's what I is going to be. So basically what I want to do is if I is greater than, let's say greater than 5. If I is greater than 5, well, let's say 4, just so we switch more often. Let's say if I is greater than 4, then what I want to do is I want to go into, if we come back here for a second, we take a look at our custom player, and we take a look at our animator. Basically, we want to set this trigger value. We want to set the trigger so it switches around. Okay? Let's go back to our code. So if I is greater than 4, then what we want to do is we want to go to our player, anim, all right, which is where our trigger is located, and we want to use a built-in function called setTrigger. All right, you have to know the name of the trigger you want to set, and in my case, I called it idle trigger. I know it's a crappy name. You guys think of better names, all right? So basically, what we want to do is we want to set our idle trigger. Now, regardless of whether or not we actually set our trigger, whether or not we actually go through and do our switch, what I want to do is I want to reset the time, okay? I want to set my next idle switch equal to, again, our time.time, so our current time.time, plus our idle switch. All right? And in doing so, what this does is each time that our time runs out, there's a chance that we might switch, and there's a chance we won't. And therefore, we're not going to ever have anything that's a pattern. All right, we're going to have an opportunity to break a pattern. So sometimes it'll switch, and sometimes it won't. Okay, so I'm going to say File, and I'm going to save this. Now, when I do, let me minimize this. If we come back to our player, our custom player, and we scroll down to our player controller, we're going to see we have a value here for our idle switch. And basically that is just timing. It's just basically timing. You can set it to whatever you want. If you want to switch every 5 minutes, then you put that in there. If you want to switch fairly often, let's say we want to switch every 3 seconds. All right, every 3 seconds is a chance that our character will switch sides. Now, if I hit play, when I hit play, oh, actually, let's maximize on play again. Let's maximize on play. When I hit play, my character should go through, and after 3 seconds, there's a chance the character might switch over. All right? That's waiting. Hopefully our trigger's going to go into place. Waiting. There we go. So you can see that wasn't a set amount of time. There, it switched again. All right, so our player is switching back and forth, but it's not a set amount of time. After 3 seconds, it's checking, do I want to switch? Do I not want to switch? I don't know. All right, if the actual number kicks in, then it'll switch. Now, 3 seconds is probably too quickly. You don't want to switch this often. That's a lot of switching back and forth. All right, so we're going to want to set it to an appropriate value. Maybe every 10 seconds we check. All right, it's up to you guys. Go through and figure out exactly what you want there. All right, guys, that's all I wanted to do for today. The last thing I am going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to drop it into script so everything's all together. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. We are way over time. All right, we finished off our initial idle. We're going to make some changes this later on, but for now, it's complete. All right, guys, good luck. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know down in the comments. I love to hear from you, okay? Tell me what you're doing. Tell me about your project. All right, guys? Thumbs up, thumbs down, comments down below, and if you haven't done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.